So... Why? You sound like Homer Simpson. Hey everyone, as always Jarek here, and welcome to a game that does not live up to its name. Welcome to Medal of Honor Above and Beyond. Believe it or not, I was pretty excited for this game. Over the last 6 months or so, I've grown to really appreciate VR shooters. Boneworks and Half-Life Alyx are some of the best video game experiences I've had in a long time. But the biggest complaint to have about VR is just that there's not enough AAA titles. So when I found out there's going to be a Medal of Honor VR title made by Respawn, well, it seemed too good to be true. And it definitely was. Let's start with the most obvious issues this game has. For starters, the requirements are 2080. No, not maximum, minimum. The game's minimum requirements are a 2080. Okay, well, I have a 3080, so I should be fine, right? Like, that shouldn't cause an issue for me. My computer's overdone as hell. Nope. Still stuttering and frame rate issues in this game. This is a much bigger issue than other games because if anything is stuttering in VR, man, do you feel it. I'd like to point out that I'm not new to VR. I definitely have my VR legs. I can play Boneworks for 6-7 hours and be perfectly fine. I mean, hell, people's biggest complaints about Boneworks is generally that it's just too janky of a game and makes them feel weird. I don't know, I love Boneworks. This game, though, didn't quite make me sick. Definitely was giving me a headache. This game is not optimized well. Here's my specs. An AMD 3700X, 32GB of DDR4 RAM at 3600 MHz, 2TB NVMe SSD, and a 3080. Needless to say, my computer should crush any game coming out right now, except for maybe Cyberpunk. I'll get to that eventually. That's apparently not the case, as this game does not run very well. It stutters pretty frequently, and to make things worse, when things stutter in VR, you'll occasionally just drop whatever you're holding. So one moment you're shooting at an enemy, the next moment your gun is suddenly holstered because that's what happens when you let go of guns in this game. Not good. Now take a good look at this game, and please tell me that this game shouldn't require more than what Half-Life Alyx or Boneworks requires. It doesn't look better than Half-Life Alyx, and it doesn't have more interactivity than Boneworks does. In Boneworks, you can interact with everything. You can climb on anything. It's the true VR experience that I always want. Half-Life Alyx doesn't quite take things to the level that Boneworks does in this regard, but its worlds are way more detailed, and it's just a better looking game. Medal of Honor Above and Beyond does occasionally look pretty good, but the worlds are very static. There's very little to interact with. And then you look at the NPCs. Oh, she actually killed him. Cool. And that's just the whole level. Now it's just talking again.
We believe you.
We need to join.
Oh my god, look at their face! What's wrong with their face? My god, people do not look good in this game. Compare the level of detail in the NPCs in this game to any NPC in Half-Life Alyx. You might say, well yeah, but that's Half-Life Alyx, that's an unfair comparison. These are two AAA games with a big budget. I don't think that's an unfair comparison at all. I don't expect Medal of Honor Above and Beyond to look as good as Half-Life Alyx, but at least try to compete with it. Oh, also, may I point out that this is a full $60 game? Let's just move on to the story. Well, it's World War II. And Europe again. This isn't to say you can't have interesting stories in World War II. World War II as a whole is incredibly interesting. There's a lot you can do with it. But boy, does that not show through here. I actually want to talk less about the story itself rather than the game's presentation of said story. This is one of those games that just refuses to let you play the game. You'll be stuck standing in places NPCs talk around you about things you don't really care about. The screen will fade to black, it'll fade back in, you have a few minutes of shooting, then it fades to black, it fades back in, and NPCs talk again. This is what happens for the whole time. There is no way that you could become immersed in this title because any moment you start getting somewhere, the screen fades to black, fades back in, you're somewhere else, and NPCs are talking and you can't walk or do anything. Immersion as a whole was thrown out the window, which makes no sense as a VR title. Oh, also may I point out that the first hour of my playtime were tutorials? I'm not shitting you, exactly 1 hour of tutorials. These aren't interesting tutorials in any way whatsoever. This is what they are.
Into an active combat zone. Whenever you're in close proximity to an explosion, you might feel a concussive blast. The technicians call it camera shake. You can also feel this camera shake phenomenon when firing your weapon. But through the wonders of modern medicine, I can easily adjust how much camera shake you feel. Please, let me know your preference.
Did you really need to try to make this, like, make sense in-game lore? Oh god, hand. I cannot really see it on the sides because my hand is in the way.
Specialist Lamouche. Here's Specialist Lamouche. Here's Specialist
That's not supposed to happen.
Carry, you pretend to hurt yourself by smashing your hand on these rusty nails.
What? Okay.
Ouch. Grab a first aid syringe. Now comes the fun part. Stab yourself in the chest.
In the chest.
Syringe will
Dick stab.
auto-inject the medicine.
Yeah, have fun with those tutorials for an hour. I guess this is a good segue into the gameplay. It's just as bad as everything else. This game is exactly what people that haven't played VR will think of when they think of VR being a gimmick. This game feels like a VR title that came out 4 years ago. VR has come a long way, and we have rich, deep experiences. I'm not just saying this because of Half-Life Alyx. As much as I love Half-Life Alyx, it really is just a Half-Life game shoved into VR for more immersion. The VR is used more as a world-building thing, and they honestly played it really safe. Boneworks, on the other hand, really tried to push VR forward. That could be at its detriment, because people do complain about it feeling janky, but I'm not really one of those people. In my opinion, I actually like Boneworks more than Half-Life Alyx, at least as a VR title. I feel like Half-Life Alyx is the better video game, Boneworks is the better VR title, if that makes sense. My point here is that both of these games have rich interaction with the world around you. They let the player explore, they let the player play the game. The story is told in a natural way. Medal of Honor Above and Beyond does none of these things. Again, VR titles have come a long way and the bar was already set. Above and Beyond is doing things we've seen 4 years ago. It feels like a gimmick in an unfinished game. And speaking of interactive worlds, trying to pick up anything is a complete gamble because you don't know what the game is going to highlight. When you want to pick something up, you point at it, it should glow blue, you press the grab button, and it teleports into your hand. If you're lucky, it's the thing you actually want to pick up. Most of the time, it won't be. You know that part of the trailer where they show someone grabbing the grenade out of the air and throwing it back? Yeah, that's complete horse shit. That never works. Okay, let's have some actual examples. Let's talk about the guns really quick. Now, typically when I'm covering video games, I don't actually dock points off for games having unrealistic guns unless they're trying to be a tactical realistic shooter. As much as I like realistic guns, I don't think it's necessary to have a good video game if that's not really what their goal is. However, when it comes to VR, I think guns being realistic is incredibly important because you are actively reloading them and using them. Having guns not work as they are supposed to leads to confusion. For example, in this game, if you fire out one bullet and then reload, magically the slide locks back and you do an empty reload every time. Why? I have no clue. Reloading itself feels pretty clunky too. You press one button on the trackpad, put another magazine in and cock it, and it just doesn't feel like you're actually interacting with the gun. I know I just explained it in a way that sounds like I explained every other VR title, but it's difficult to explain. Controls are hard to explain without just handing you the controller. For another example, if you're playing H3 VR, I could just grab a magazine out of a gun and shove a new one in. It feels organic, like that's how the gun should work. That is certainly not the case with Medal of Honor Above and Beyond. Let's take another example, the shotgun and the lever action. You can't load in shotgun shells or bullets in individually. In order to reload this shotgun or lever action, you have to completely empty the magazine tube, and it automatically does it in front of you. You're not doing anything, you're just holding the gun, it's just reloading on its own. Why in the world could you not have just had regular reloading here? This actually means a lot. It means you can't just top up your shotgun. If you have one shotgun shell left, you have to shoot that shotgun just so you can reload it. Let's take another example, the Kar 98. You never have to reload this thing. Are you trying to tell me that this gun has 13 bullets in it somehow? And cycling the bolt is all I have to do? I'm not reloading another bullet in every time I cycle the bolt, that's not what's happening. I just legit don't have to reload this gun magically. Another bizarre issue is that sometimes after you kill an enemy, there's a bit of a delay before they actually die. I've gotten kill trades because of this. It's like my offline single player game has bad netcode. And oh god, don't get me started on the scopes. You're not actually looking down the scope. In a VR title, it just has the scope that pops in front of your face. I should probably point out that yes, I am aiming down the iron sights as I'm playing this game, however, there's no way to change the spectator mode in-game. This is my headset. It is a Samsung Odyssey Plus. If you look on the inside of it, there are two different camera lenses, two different monitors, I guess we'll say. In most games, you can change the spectator mode to have it only coming out of the right eye, so you can see when I'm aiming down sights as I'm right eye dominant. That's not an option in this game, so the spectator mode is just kind of aiming down the middle of my face, so when I'm aiming down sights, you're just seeing bore. Not that it matters with the scopes, like I said. For that matter, this game doesn't officially support Windows Mixed Reality headsets. Kind of. It's not like every headset has such different hardware that you're running out at a different console or something. It just matters more for your controllers. That was a problem I ran into right away, as one of the buttons that you use to sprint is clicking in on the left analog stick. Problem is, with Windows Mixed Reality headsets, doing that opens these Steam VR options, which basically meant that if I wanted to sprint, it would pause the game. This is the equivalent to having to press the Xbox guide button every time you want to sprint. So I had to go into my Steam VR settings and change one of the buttons to sprint. Problem is, VR controllers don't really have that many buttons. What I had to end up doing was unbind the pause button on the right controller and use that as a sprint button, and rebind the pause button on the left controller to actually pause. Like I said, it doesn't say that Windows Mixed Reality is supported on the store page, so this wouldn't be an issue if there wasn't such an easy, clever solution to this that every other game has figured out. In games like Pavlov's or Zero Caliber, when you put your hands down, you automatically start sprinting. This fixes all of these problems. You don't need to bind a button to sprint, and people aren't able to sprint at 1,000,000 miles an hour while they're aiming down sights. And this is the lack of care and polish I'm talking about when it comes to this game. It hasn't done simple VR things that we figured out years ago. It feels unfinished. So then, it's almost insulting that they shoved in actual documentaries from real World War II veterans. These are inherently interesting, but the amount of love and care that went into those didn't go into the rest of the game.
You remember your serial number?
My serial number is 32905-447.
How do you remember that?
Well, I have a photographic mind.
There's a whole gallery of this stuff, and if this is your thing, you're going to enjoy it far more than the actual game. And in a similar situation, there's a survival mode that's actually a decent amount of fun. Granted, survival modes aren't that hard to make compared to a single-player story experience, but still, it's more enjoyable than said single-player story experience. And then you get to the multiplayer, which no matter what game mode you're playing, just boils down to trying to shoot other VR players playing the same buggy mess that you are. The multiplayer mode feels arcadey and unfinished, just like the rest of the game. Again, we already have multiplayer VR experiences that have done this far better. Say Pavlov's, a much better experience. If you want multiplayer VR, go play that instead. Its guns also feel better too. And speaking of, there's only like 8 or 9 total in this game. None of them feel rewarding, half of them just feel unrealistic, reloading doesn't work as intended, this game is not satisfying. It has some baffling choices too. One I'm a little more indifferent about is the fact that when you drop a gun, you automatically holster it. It plays an odd animation where it spins around you and goes to your back, but I mean, I can kind of understand this. In some other VR titles, if you try to holster a gun, it can be a bit of a pain to holster it instead of just dropping it. So, whatever, I can deal with this, but it is definitely weird. There's another mechanic where if you're holding a grenade and you put it next to your face and pull away, you'll bite the pin out. This is useful if you're holding anything in your left hand. The problem is where you holster grenades is on your chest. Naturally, you want to look down at what you're trying to grab, and if you're looking down at your chest and pulling a grenade, you just automatically pull the pin. Now you're holding a live grenade when you didn't mean to. A similar story can happen with the syringes. I found myself randomly stabbing myself when I didn't mean to. The health in itself is a little bit weird too. I don't see a health bar anywhere on me, which leads me to believe that it's a recharging health system, until your health gets below a certain point, and then it won't recharge on its own until you use a syringe. Again, this is kind of a weird choice for health. There's a ton of small issues that easily could have been figured out. For example, occasionally with some guns, your hand will just block the iron sights, you can't aim down iron sights. Why is this even an issue? How could you not see that coming? Truth be told, all the warning signs were there when it came to Medal of Honor VR. This started as an Oculus exclusive, it eventually lost that exclusivity when it came to Steam, but even then people didn't seem to be getting review copies that much. I tried, believe me. And on top of that, there just didn't really seem to be that much marketing for it. When you're releasing a AAA title and you see very little marketing, that's a huge warning sign. On top of that, news are coming out that this game was going to require 300 something gigabytes to install, and then it would go down to 170. From what I gather, this is only true on the Oculus store. I bought it on Steam and didn't need 300 something to start installing, but it did take 170 gigabytes, which, why does this game take 170 gigabytes? You cannot tell me this looks better than Half-Life Alyx. And then when you launch the game, you're not greeted with a cool Valve intro, or you're not greeted with like a Boneworks main room. No, you're greeted with huge 2D screens in front of you. That was when I really realized, okay, yeah, this is gonna be one of those experiences. A non-finished game that's being pushed out for $60 when it shouldn't be. And then I confirmed it later when I was stuck on an on-a-rail section on the back of a truck, unable to walk around, with my frame rate stuttering and going all over the place. This right here is the worst VR experience I have ever had. This one moment felt horrible. There is nothing good to come out of this game. If you were looking forward to it, I am sorry, Medal of Honor has flopped again. Don't buy this game. It is not worth $60. I have a feeling that maybe if they released just the documentary section and the survival mode for like 10 bucks, 15 bucks, that'd be fine. As a $60 title in this state, it is not worth it. That should sum up everything I have to say. I'm just as disappointed as you guys are. I wanted another good AAA VR title, and we're just not getting many of them. Either way, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Thanks to everyone that joined me over on Twitch while I was streaming it. My Twitch is twitch.tv/JarekTheGamingDragon if you want to hang out. If you subscribe, you get to see my videos ahead of time. Thanks to all of you guys that have watched, and I'll see you next time.